Hi, my name's Jess Martin, and I'm making this video, give you some background of the science of learning, and there's a reason why I'm making it. I was doing a webinar yesterday, and one of the webinars ended up being a little while with a mother of a young girl, 6-year-old girl, and we talked about the science of learning and how people actually learn and how the education system works. And this morning, after video, I noticed that she had written me a little blurb made a comment on one of the things that I'd posted on LinkedIn, and she basically said, "Thank you so much. I learned a lot." And when I showed my wife this morning, she said, you're not doing much, and you need to be doing more to, well, bring some money into the house. I work at the local university. I teach a couple of classes a year, and I make less than the cleaners doing it. And she said, you know this stuff. You've been selected as LinkedIn Voice of Education for 2017, and so there are a lot of people who read your stuff and say, "Wow, this is good stuff. This tells us." So she said, make some short videos and see if people will watch them, and maybe if they're worthwhile, set up a donation button that they can donate a little bit of money if they can. You can watch them for free if you want. That's what I'm doing, and this is a background. Science of learning is basically the science, the behavioral science, and all the research that's been done over the last 100 years about how people learn. We know a lot about learning, and there's when I was doing my working at a university overseas, I was into the teaching and learning and done a PhD in cognitive psychology. Which is how people think, study of how people think. And I would go to these educational conferences and seminars and that kind of stuff, and I kept thinking, I don't know how this works, because it doesn't fit with what goes on in the brain. And as I was thinking those kind of things, I would go home and, well, these people are in education, they must know stuff I don't. I went to a talk by Robert Bjork one time, and he was a keynote speaker, and he said something that just changed my life. He said, a lot of what's done in education has nothing to do with how people learn and how the brain works. And I talked to him afterwards, and he said, well, we study how the brain works. We study how people learn. We study how people think. Education doesn't. They study how to teach people. And so they teach people without actually, going into how people actually learn. That was a real eye-opener, and I went and started looking into this, and, he was right. I, came across this quote by Carl Wieman a few years later, and, this says it all. All this work has been done, and it just never gets into the classrooms. It's not used for teaching. I talked to a teacher friend a while back, and he said, I did 5 years of training to be a school teacher, and he says, I took a class on how people learn. And I got really excited about this, and I said, hey, whose work did you use? Where were the papers? What textbook did you use? I want to have a look at this and see how good it is. And he said, no, you get me wrong. He says, misunderstanding is, I took 1 3-hour class in a 5-year degree about how people learn. Yeah, how can you teach people without understanding how they learn? That's the whole wrong perspective. You're coming from a me as a teacher perspective instead of them as a student and how they learn. It's me as a teacher and how I teach. So what is it that we know? Well, here's cognitive science. You can see there's all kinds of things on this list that we study. And some of this stuff we've studied for over 100 years. And we know what's going on in the brain with attention and memory. We know how memory works. We know how people put their memories in there, how they pull them out. We know this stuff. This has been well documented. There's literally tens of thousands of scientific papers written on this stuff. Language processing, higher order thinking, decision making, logic, all that kind of stuff. We know this stuff. It's not rocket science, it's the science of learning. And then, if we look at cognitive development, this stuff goes back 75, 80 years, and it's pretty solid stuff on how people actually develop their thinking from the time they're born, basically, until they're, well into their adulthood and begin to decline, after they reach a certain age. And the milestones that tell us, all right, at this age, children or young adults can understand how to do this kind of thing, and get so frustrated at seeing what, we're going to take stuff that children absolutely can't do and we're going to teach it to them. Read a little bit of literature and then of course we've got, this whole area of motivation. We know how to motivate people, and it's not by putting flowered pictures on the wall. There are very clear scientific principles as to how we actually motivate individuals to do things, including how we get them to study and how we get them to learn. This is, we know it. We know it, and we know it well. This stuff has been studied for years and years and years, but it's not used in education. I'm going to make a series of video and touch on all of these things, hopefully keep them nice and short. And they're for whoever needs them, mothers, fathers, students, because I'll talk some about how you learn as young adults and university students. Some teachers may find this interesting, although a lot of teachers that I talk to, they know all they need to know about teaching, learning, and education, and so it ends up being a bit frustrating for me. It doesn't matter. This is more for those who are interested in how people learn, not necessarily how people teach. And we'll see if this is useful. Watch a few videos, and if you find them useful, it would certainly help me pay the rent if there was a little bit of a donation. What I'm concerned about and what I'm passionate about is helping people learn. And you, as a stakeholder, if you can help someone with the kind of thing that I'm going to be recording, well, go ahead and use it, because that's what I'm about. Talk to you again in another video.